Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Everyday Ethics. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I'm looking forward to this week. Let me tell you, I was going to say I need some rest, but I really don't rest on the weekend. I got shows to do on Saturday, shows to do on Sunday. I guess it just never ends. Let's see, we got some people watching. We got any comments yet? No, remember, we do accept super chats and super stickers, and they are very, very much appreciated. So I wanted to talk a little bit about honesty, and of course, any questions that you have, bring them. We're not stuck on this topic of honesty, but please have your questions be relevant to the topic of everyday ethics of how we conduct ourselves on a daily basis. That would be very much appreciated. What got me? Hi, Katrin. So what got me thinking, Katrin, DM me your email, please. I gotta so I can send you the information you needed. Um, what got me thinking about this was the honesty is a virtue, right? But it's contextual, right? Like we don't say you have to tell the truth to people that are trying to rob you or trying to steal you, and we don't have to divulge personal information to people that are prying into our business. So what actually Thank you, Katrin. So what I was actually thinking about was situations where I'll give you a hypothetical. Let me share this real quickly. The hypothetical that I was thinking about is a situation where somebody, it might be said, deserves the truth, but at the same time, that very truth might cause them pain. Suppose, for instance, as a hypothetical, that a guy is in a relationship, or let's say a woman is in a relationship with a guy and she cheats on him. And, she really, really regrets it afterwards. She decides to turn her life around, and she does. She becomes a person of high character. She becomes a very good wife, but they still have this between them that he doesn't know, and she cheated. Now, telling him that she cheated is going to cause him an immense amount of pain. It's not going to benefit him in any way, and it's going to ruin their marriage or their relationship if they aren't married. But at the same time, he's in a relationship with somebody that he doesn't know what she has actually done, especially done to him. And that seems to me it kind of puts a barrier in the relationship. So I don't know the answer, right? I don't know the answer to this question. That's why I kind of posed it to the people. Is the ethical thing to do in this situation to tell the truth, to come clean about the one night stand that she had, or is the thing to do to eat it, to hold it, allow it to bother her, but it doesn't hurt the person that she cheated on? I don't know. And there's a lot of, variations on this theme. I know that in my experience, in my past, I have been compulsively honest with people because I want people to know who I am. I want when somebody's in a friendship with me or in a relationship with me, I want them to love or like me for me. And that entails knowing who I am and the things that I've done. It doesn't mean I have to tell them every little thing I've ever done, but just enough so that they understand. So I always err on the side of being honest, but an argument can be made. And I've seen, made even on television, in movies, television shows, and friends have said this to me that what about when being honest, all it's doing is helping you to clear your conscience so that you can feel better, and it's actually hurting the person to whom you're telling the truth. And when we tie that into our egoism, to our ethic of self-interest, is it in my interest to unburden myself, even if it's going to cause the other person harm? But at the same time, it might cost me the relationship that I'm in, or cost, you the relationship you're in. So I don't know. It's a tough decision. And, I think that is sometimes what happens in life is it's very complicated in the things that we have to decide. There's not always a clear right decision. There often is, I'd even go so far as to say there usually is a right thing to do, a clear right thing to do, but sometimes it's messy. Now, some people want a clear 2 + 2 = 4 answer to every ethical question, to every political question, to every philosophical question. Sometimes it's just not that simple. It's not just a matter of, see, in a realistic ethic, right? In an ethic based on reality, we don't have commandments. Thou shalt be honest. Thou shalt not steal. That sort of thing. So it's often a difficult decision to make. So, who prays for Satan says, do you think that kind of compulsive honesty can be kind of self-destructive behavior? That's something I worry about sometimes. It can be. It depends. And I should clarify that I'm not talking about, divulging my bank account to numbers to strangers. Like, that's not the thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about in a context where the person that you are dealing with may not deal with you if they knew the truth. And it seems to me in most cases that telling the truth is important because, like I said, I want my friends to like me for me. If they know something that's going to cause them to distance themselves from me, then by all means, distance yourself. You know what I mean? That's your choice in the matter. And I think that though in those situations, honesty is the right thing to do. Katie Ellis says, I'm honest to a fault and people can't handle my brutal honesty all the time. Well, that gets back to tact too. And I'm not the person to give a lecture on tact because I'm often very untactful. But tact is, you can tell somebody the truth that, you can tell somebody, hey, as your friend, you've gained a few pounds and maybe that's not the healthiest thing for you. You might want to do some exercising or, maybe adjust your diet. That's different than telling somebody, hey, fatso, you're piling on the pounds, do something about it. Katie says, I don't sugarcoat things just to tell them what they want to hear. No, you shouldn't. But if there's a way to say the same thing and get your message across, and one of those ways is mean and the other isn't, I would say, be nice. And who prays for Satan says timing is also important when it comes to honesty. Well, sure. I mean, you're at a wedding and that 10 years previous you had an affair and you think it's time to tell. The wedding may not be the proper place, or a funeral, or you're out to dinner with your in-laws and you make the announcement. So sure, I would say that timing is vital. In these situations, that's just the way it is. And that goes to the whole, we're talking about an ethic for living, something that helps us to thrive, something that helps to increase our happiness, helps us to live better lives, not something that's going to be destructive to ourselves and those around us. So Mr. Deagle says, what if you know that your friend or acquaintance cheated on his girlfriend? Should you tell her? I would say, first of all, it depends on your relationship with her. It depends on whether your friend is asking you to overtly lie to her. But if all that happens is your friend has cheats, which is not a good thing, and he confides in you and you don't really know his girlfriend or his wife all that well, I would say it's not your business to go forward and say something about it. It's just not. You may want to consider the person with whom you're friends and whether you want to continue that relationship. That depends on a lot of factors, about the nature of their relationship, the nature of your relationship with him. And there's just a lot of things going on there. So Diego says, honest. Okay. Excuse that. It says the principle here is the relationship. If the relationship is monogamous, then you need to be honest to that principle. Honesty here is to the principle primarily, not to the other person directly. If you are not honest in the relationship, you will always have that pit inside your soul that you can't escape. You will never have closure on your integrity. Um, I am inclined to agree with Diego on this, that we can never have that relationship if I'm not honest about it. Um, I just don't know if that is an absolute that would apply in all relationships, regardless of the harm done to the other person, the harm done to myself. But generally speaking, I agree with Diego on this. Diego says the relationship was already damaged, even if the other person doesn't know about the affair. Well, this is the key though, Diego, and I don't know if you got here at the beginning. If context dependent, of course, Diego says, and he's right. So I'm talking about a situation where the affair happened. It's a one night stand. That person that had the affair then takes the steps to remedy his or her character, becomes a good person, is honest, trustworthy. And it's, maybe 5, 10 years later, is the right thing to do then to confide or to confess, rather, that this has occurred 10 years earlier, when the relationship is now solid, and all you're going to do in this situation is unburden yourself at the expense of your partner. This Daniel says the safety of others needs to be considered when being honest about others' lives. I agree, and that goes back to the case of, if I know that a friend cheated on his spouse, especially if I don't know all the details. um you know um Uh, Diego says that's psychologizing on an individual basis. I don't know how an individual can unburden yourself without telling your partner about the breach of their relationship. I don't know. I don't know either. And that's why it's a difficult thing. You said it's psychologizing, Diego. You're gonna have to clarify me for me, because that's not how I understand psychologizing. But I do think that the safety of others is important. Is somebody suicidal? Is this going to lead to violence if I, go and stick myself in somebody else's business, um, in that sort of thing? And even with the person with whom I'm talking, my honesty is going to hurt that person deeply, then do I do it? And these are complex questions. Diego hasn't yet answered the question, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm also wondering if there are any other questions here. Katrin says it's difficult. I think still the other person deserves the truth. It's a really hard decision though, but I think it'd be worse if the person finds out later and finds out I knew and didn't say anything. That's an interesting dynamic too. She says, I have a friend I know from X, an irrelevant relative of him used his name to try to scam money from me, and at the same time put pressure on me to not tell my friend about it. Ultimately, I had to make the decision whether to tell my friend the truth and causing him a damaged relationship, or at least a dispute with his uncle over the holidays, or keeping it to myself. See, I would tell in that situation. If I knew my friend's spouse was cheating on my friend, I would tell the friend in most circumstances. And if I knew somebody was using a friend's name to scam others, I would tell the friend. The question that was put before is if it's somebody I consider a friend doing the cheating. Mr. Deagle says, let's say she asks you directly, you don't know her well. Should you tell her, even if you will have issues with the boyfriend? Um, Again, so divorced from the context and the specifics. I don't know. My inclination would be to say you need to talk to your husband, or you need to talk to your boyfriend. I don't want to be in the middle of this, and it's not right that you are putting me in the middle of this. So that I would say that if I was in a relationship, or if somebody else was in a relationship and they cheated on the spouse, and the spouse asked them directly, did you do this? Then I would say almost certainly the answer needs to be yes. If your partner asks you if you've been unfaithful at any point in the relationship, and you have, I think this person wants the truth. In that case, I think yes, probably say. But again, it often depends on the facts of the case and the exact context that we're discussing, that we're talking about. My conscience, and this goes kind of to what Diego says, if I know I've done something wrong, my conscience kills me. Uh, I've developed a very strong conscience, and a lot of this has to do with Dr. And uh, Stanton Saminow and Samuel Yokelson. because when they're counseling, when they're helping to rehabilitate criminals, they say it's essential to make criminals feel guilty. They have to feel guilty in order to change. There has to be that discomfort. So I've really trained myself to feel guilty when I've done wrong. Um, and sometimes, to be honest, I feel guilt when I haven't done wrong, and then I have to work in the other direction to unburden myself for unearned guilt. But I could not be in a relationship like that. I wouldn't be able to function had I cheated on somebody. I couldn't do it, and I think that's Diego's point, and I think it's a strong one. But I don't know that that's a universal thing, or if that just has to do with my own, individual psychology. Diego says making criminals feel guilty is an attempt into tapping into their integrity. I disagree, Diego. I'm sorry, because they generally don't have integrity at the so to say you're tapping into their integrity, I think cultivating integrity and making them feel guilty for past wrongs, or you can even be tapping into whatever nascent sense of morality that they may have imbibed from osmosis, during their lives. But the integrity is just not there on the part of criminals to tap into. I wonder, for the audience, when it comes to this topic of everyday ethics, would you ever be interested, anybody in the audience, in having a discussion about criminals and about criminal psychology and criminal rehabilitation? I'd certainly be willing to do it. It's not something that I have an aversion to. I just don't know how content or context appropriate is here, if the audience here would be interested in such a thing. But let me know. Kathy Cassio says yes. Oh, all right. Maybe we'll do that sometime next week. Remember, next Tuesday I'm off. I'm going to a Soho Forum debate in New York on Tuesday, so there will be no Capitalist Corner. There will be no this show. Jim Valiant has chimed in with a big yes. Jim Valiant rocks. Jim Valiant is one of my absolute best friends in the whole world. I'm very, very grateful for the great Jim Valiant. Jenna Kleem says husband number 3. I think she's saying that husband number 3 was a criminal. I don't know if he spent time in the Hooskow, the Stony Lonesome, the Big House, but either way, she says that he is a criminal. Okay, so Deeper with Diego says you're going to have roughly around 160 topics for the show every year. I'm sure you can dedicate one day to something you are an expert on. Sure, I don't know what 160 topics means, but Diego does a lot of voice to chat. So there's that. If we end up for doing the show on criminal rehabilitation or not, we are really going to have to delve into criminal psychology, criminal thinking errors, which I'm fine doing, but it will probably have to be a 2-parter. One part where we just discuss the criminal psychology, and then the next where we can discuss maybe even a 3-part or 4-parter. I don't know, but I'm very interested in doing it. We'll do it next week. Maybe on Wednesday, because I don't want to do Monday and then interrupt with leaving Tuesday. So we'll do it probably starting next Wednesday. We'll delve into the criminal psychology and criminal rehabilitation. I'm very, and to be honest, a lot of the principles that apply to criminal rehabilitation apply to self-help in general, apply to ethics in general. The idea of developing a moral code, of developing a strong conscience, reason over emotion is one of the big things that the doctors delve into. It's very important to not make decisions based on how we feel, but rather on what what reason is dictating we do, is a principle of theirs. They also, talk about the importance of having, putting effort into our lives. They talk about being realistic in our our assessments and our goals. So Mr. Digo says, this is off topic, but I'm interested in how should we judge promiscuity in friends and past promiscuity of partners. Judging the sexual lives of other people is a very difficult thing to do if we don't know particulars. Is it an open relationship? You know, what's going on in the relationship? You know, generally speaking, I say that infidelity is wrong. If you're being dishonest to somebody that you are supposed to be honest with, then I would say it's wrong. But it's a complex topic. The past promiscuity of partners is interesting because should you, and ultimately it depends on um, whether you trust that that person has corrected their behavior, right? I mean, when I was a teenager, and I had girlfriends, I was unfaithful, as sure as I breathe. It was just a part of my makeup, I guess. It's just what I did. I just didn't care. There was no consideration at all that I had a girlfriend. Now, if I ever did such a thing, I'd die. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So yeah, but I'm not that way anymore. So if somebody's been promiscuous in the past, I mean, has been, as she said, said promiscuity. I assumed he meant unfaithful. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question, Mr. Deagle. Promiscuity, that's going to depend. I mean, if you're talking about somebody that randomly has sex with others, that's a character defect. There's because sex is such an important topic, and we'll probably have to get into that, the ethics of sex. But if somebody is just sleeping with random strangers without any consideration for the character of the people with whom they're having sex with, that's an issue. The past promiscuity of partners, um, it's ultimately it's irrelevant as long as that person is going to be faithful to you, right? We're not religious. We're not, there's no sin in sex. People aren't ruined by their pasts. So if somebody has been promiscuous in the past, but they're going to be honest with you, then who gives a damn who they've had sex with or what they've done in the past? That's not relevant to me. It's only relevant how they are right now. You know what I mean? That's what matters. Deeper with Diego says, I don't even know it's something I could even judge correctly. How would I even do that? He does, and I think he's referring to past sescapades. Deeper with Diego says, ladies in chat, would you want to date a guy or be married to a guy who has cheated on you and hasn't told you? Do you think you're going to get the full man out of such a guy? That's a good question. I'm interested in that as well, but it would also apply to guys in the chat. If the woman, if a woman has cheated, no name says, what's wrong with sleeping with random guys? Well, I'm not gay. That's the first thing. So it would be really weird if I did that. But, on a serious note, to get into that, we'd really have to get into the nature of sex and, sexual psychology, sexual ethics. The bottom line is, what are you attracted to? Why are you having sex with this person? What in your character is allowing this? What about your self-esteem? What about your values, your goals? There's a whole lot of stuff that goes into that. This is interesting. So, yeah. So Deeper with Diego says that's an entire show topic. Yes, it is. I would love to get into that. If we were going to really discuss sexual ethics and sexual psychology, I'd probably want to have somebody like Jim Valiant on to help guide the discussion. But generally speaking, when somebody, in my experience, when somebody is having random sex with people, there's serious self-esteem issues there, and those issues stem from somewhere in their psychology. And in my experience and in my reading, people are attracted to specific people for a reason. You're attracted to people based on their values, their character. It goes beyond mere looks. So if you're just out there randomly having sex without understanding the people, character you're having sex with, it's, first of all, it's very risky to do that. But yeah, I would like to save that for another topic. For another day. Jim says anytime. Katie and Jim, we will do that. Katie says, I have a question. Do you think it's wrong to expect the partner to be open about what they do on their phone? I mean, no, I know everyone has a right to privacy, but like, I am an open book and don't care and willingly allow my partner to access my phone. Uh, I I don't do anything on my phone that I care what anybody else knows. There's two parts to this, right? If if somebody is thinking I need to see my partner's phone because I don't trust them, that's a little weird and very controlling. But on the flip side, if somebody's being so secretive that they don't want anybody to know what they're doing on their phone or don't want their spouse to know what they're doing on their phone, I see that as a problem too. So I guess it depends on how you're looking at this. No name says, but if I don't want a relationship. Okay, so no name. Importantly, the question was about random guys. I'm not saying that the only time sex can ever be appropriate is in a monogamous relationship. I'm saying if you are being promiscuous and going around sleeping, having sex with random guys, that is likely a problem. It's likely it's something about your psychology that's causing you to do this, probably trying to gain some sense of self-esteem from doing it. That's a different scenario than if you have a um, for lack of a better term, friends with benefits, that sort of thing. Yes, we can discuss the value or disvalue of porn, Mr. Deagle. These are all very, very good questions. They're just really deep questions that are going to require a few days of discussion that I don't think they can be answered in one. I mean, I can answer some of them in one-offs. Generally speaking, I think porn is an unhealthy thing. I can say that, but we need to get into a broader discussion, about that. Similar with promiscuity. Generally speaking, I say that it's an unethical thing to do because I think it's harmful to the person doing it. That doesn't mean that there cannot be situations that you could think of where, I might be wrong. No name says everyone has secrets. That's true. Deeper with Diego says asking to look at someone's phone is akin to asking a woman to read her childhood diary. That's a good point. To some people, context, of course. No, Danny, no Tuesday coffee. I'll be in New York. So if you want to do it, we probably have to do it Wednesday. Katie Ellis says, my ex-husband hated if I ever saw anything on his phone while I gave him my logins and access because I didn't care. And I know conversations he was having that were not faithful. Well, this is my point. If I'm in a relationship with somebody that I don't trust to be on their phone, like I shouldn't be in that relationship. I just shouldn't. Now, if somebody's going out of their way to, if someone's going out of their way to hide what they're doing on their phone, again, I probably shouldn't be in a relationship with that person. That's the way that I think about it. Danny, let me know about this Wednesday coffee thing because I'd like to do it on Wednesday. So that's what I think about that. Deeper with Diego's throwing out a $10 super sticker. Thank you, Diego. That is freaking awesome. Thank you so much. Jenna Kleem, super chat. Don't touch my phone. All right. Get off my train. I'm with that. Jenna Kleem was flirting with Diego a few minutes ago here in the chat. That's cool too. Diego says years ago, my wife offered me the password to her phone and I don't have any password on my phone. Neither of us look at each other's phone, but the offer is always there. Yeah. I leave my phone all around. I don't give a damn, who sees my phone or what they see on my phone. That's, I guess, I don't know. That's just not a deal for me. It's not something that really concerns me, one way or the other. No name says, peace. I hope that doesn't mean you're leaving. We still have a little over a minute left, No Name, and you are always welcome on the show. I'm hoping someday No Name actually tells us her real name. That would be wonderful. I suppose that could apply to just about anybody, but I mean, Diego's name is Diego. Katie is Katie. Everybody else here, I know Mr. Deagle. I don't know if Deagle's his real name. That sounds fake, but it could be real. Mr. Deagle, is Mr. Deagle your real name? Katie says that she and her husband are divorced for many reasons. Yes, that's good. If the guy is dishonest, if the guy's unfaithful, Mr. Deagle, that is not his real name. I didn't think so. Now, I suppose there could be somebody named Johnny Deagle, but it just doesn't seem like a real name to me. Okay, we're getting ready to wrap up. We're heading out for the weekend. I hope everyone has a great one, by the way. Wow, Mr. Deagle made that nickname up when he was 12. Awesome. Persephone real quickly says she and her husband have passcodes for security, but we have each other's codes and sometimes use each other's codes and phones. We don't need to go snooping. Mr. Deagle's only 22 years old. Wow. That's awesome. 22 years old, and he's interested in philosophy, psychology. That's great. Okay. I will see you all, I hope, on Monday. And then on Wednesday, we will be discussing criminal psychology, criminal rehabilitation. Everybody, thank you all so much. Love you. Have a great, great weekend.